Welcome to Culturally Appropriate for the last day of September, first week of October. To celebrate the Nashville Film Festival, which started last night, we're going to pretty much devote our entire show today to local filmmakers and some of the picks of the festival. I will be heading there right after the show is over. So this is kind of like Christmas for film fans in Knoxville and also a big draw for people all across the country. So first, we're going to talk to friend of the pamphleteer, J. Curtis Miller, who has a movie screening tonight at 9 p.m. at Regal Green Hills in the Nashville Film Festival. He's going to give us some of his picks, and we're going to talk about some of the things we're most looking forward to at the festival. Next, we are going to talk to local filmmakers Corbin Eden and Haley Tabor, who made a movie about Franklin-based nonprofit Backlight Productions that's also screening today at 4 p.m. And then we're going to end with our weekly film rundown, as if the Nashville Film Festival didn't give us enough viewing options this week. We have over 18 movies playing in Nashville. We're not going to go over all of them, but their full rundown will be able to be found on the Pamphleteer's newsletter and the website today. So let's go ahead and get started with Jay. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Do you have those first pre-screening jitters going on? Are you feeling pretty good about everything?
Yeah. And pretty much started around like 5 o'clock yesterday because I just found out our screening is sold out. So this will be my first ever packed house.
That's awesome. Yeah, I noticed that. But for those of our viewers who didn't actually get tickets, it will be available virtually starting Monday. Is that right?
Yeah. I think for the same price too. And you get it for an extended period of time for about like a few days. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like 48 hours or something like that. So anybody that doesn't get to go tonight for the premiere event at Regal Green Hills can watch it in a couple of days and kind of watch it at their own leisure on demand. And I think you also
Yeah.
have a couple of other screenings coming up in the state. Is that right?
Yeah. So this weekend is actually pretty crazy. We're screening in 3 different cities and 3 different film festivals. So tonight, 9 p.m. at the Nashville Film Festival at Regal Green Hills Theater 2, sold out. Tomorrow we'll be screening in Colorado, I think Longmont, Colorado, at the Dickens Opera House at 4:30 p.m. as part of the 6 Feet Under Film Festival. And then Sunday we'll be screening at 3 p.m. at the Buried Alive Film Festival at the Plaza Theater in Atlanta, Georgia.
Are you going down for that one, or are you staying at Nashville all week?
I'm pretty much in Nashville all week. I couldn't make it. I've got Bengals tickets actually on Sunday. So
yeah, so there's
at the Titan game. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a lot. I mean, that's great. And then you've got 2 screenings coming up in Knoxville, as I understand too, in the next
Yeah, so yeah, that'll be later on in October. And then in November at the Film Fest Knox Festival at their inaugural fest. So
we'll have plenty of chances to see MK Ultraviolence. And I know we've talked about this on the show before, but do you want to give the audience a brief rundown of what your film is about and maybe some of the impetus for creating it that you had in the lead up to pre-production and writing and all of that fun stuff?
Yeah. Basically, it's set in 1968. It's very vague as to where it's, but it's in Tennessee. It opens up with a Vietnam veteran. He's kind of mute. He doesn't talk throughout the entire short, and he's just playing a guitar in a side alley, and he's picked up by this guy who's wearing a suit, well dressed. He's very charismatic, and he asks him if he's hungry. So he feeds him, and then he just kind of stokes a sort of rage within him as to he sees that he's a Vietnam veteran washed up on the street. So he invites him back to his place to kind of clean himself up and repair his mind, which he says has been shattered, and that they can help pick up the pieces. So that's kind of like the logline or tagline of the film. But with kind of covert, operations and like, undercover CIA agents, not all is what it seems on the surface level. So you just quickly learn that this is not going to end well for either Hopper, our main character, or whoever is in his way. And how I got the idea to this um, is kind of just like through um, just being kind of interested in the time period of the late 60s. Obviously, I love the films from basically Easy Rider until Raging Bull. So that turbulent time in America and how it kind of reflects today. Um, and just the whole conspiracies behind the JFK assassination, MLK, RFK, all that stuff. And just when the government was starting to get more too big for their britches and just starting to manipulate kind of like, you know, the culture and like integrating itself into like every facet of our institutions. Uh, but the main that's the broad like my broad interest, but I picked up Chaos by Tom O'Neill back in like near the end of the pandemic around 2020, and then I kind of read it, was really fascinated by it, and then just kind of stewed in my mind. And then when Quentin Tarantino went on Joe Rogan and mentioned Chaos again, I was like, oh, I'm gonna reread it again with his kind of like uh I guess like like interest behind it. And so I was rereading the book, and then I was kind of rewatching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I was mainly just kind of I had the Manson family scenes just kind of on repeat while I was kind of like listening to the audiobook. And then I just had the idea almost like it all happened in like a split second, and I was like I have to like find my computer and write this down, because like some of my ideas like take time, but sometimes it'll just happen in an instant. So I just kind of like take that energy and write it out. And then that happened, that I had that idea around May 2022. And then that's when I started writing it. And then pretty much that whole summer leading up to um, the middle of October is when we shot. I was just kind of full speed ahead, producing it, everything pretty much. So it is a true like I had a lot of help and I had some amazing creators, but up until that point, I mean, I was in charge of pretty much finding every location, prop, uh, you know, wardrobe, costume design, all that stuff. So it was a it was a daunting task, but it was well worth it. So
Awesome. Yeah, and so let's talk about a little bit of that production process, because I know a lot of people want to make films, but as you and I both know, it's not something you just can do all the time, right? I mean, it's not like
sure.
practicing piano or something like that. So, how did you go about getting interest in the film, getting financing for the film, and getting your crew together?
Um, I mean, I luckily had a lot of freelance gigs that paid for most of the film. I never fundraised anything. I never crowdfunded. I just like no one's gonna give me money for this, and I don't think personally I don't think filmmakers should like seek funding for a short film when they can kind of just do it on their own in a way and just pull favors. So I just kind of like saved up enough money um, and just kind of like kept that in my, you know, one of my savings account when it was time to shoot, like spend it all on location, acting, and equipment. Um, but yeah, I just kind of like I don't know, I just self funded it myself. So
Yeah, I always just get really, really annoyed whenever I know people just from Facebook or friends of mine or people I met at festivals who like it seems like every 3 months they're asking for money for a short, and you're just at some point like,
yeah,
why are you why do you keep making shorts, and
right,
why do you keep asking your friends for favors? Because at a certain point, like the goal is to make shorts and stop making shorts. So that always just
yeah,
irritates the heck out of me whenever people are doing that and begging for money for something like this. Get like one shot at
yeah,
it, I feel like, and after that, you're just being greedy.
yeah. I think like I mean, like how I see it is just kind of like an investment in your future. So I'm paying for an investment. I'm investing in what could be my career down the line. So it's kind of just like up to you to kind of like. I was talking to somebody the other day, like more so like short films. I think should display your directing talents less so than your writing, because you can only have so. I mean, the writing is obviously the most important, but like um, you can kind of downplay some not great writing aspects of a short film if the directing elevates it more. And that's kind of like how I see it. I see it as kind of like repping, like getting your reps in before you make your inevitable feature. So I mean, obviously, like I would look towards like crowdfunding and other ways to like fundraise like an independent feature. But short films, I just like you're kind of on your own, and I think it should be that way in a way. So
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a test. You talked a lot about how the American film renaissance from like 68 to 81 really influenced this particular film. And I can see that. I mean, I also wouldn't sell my script short on this if I were you, because I think it's really well written. That was something that really kind of sparked it for me. I mean, obviously, those friends of the pamphleteer, those who've seen you on the show before, know your style. And I think we've got some clips and some stills from the festival we can throw up too while we're talking. But
sure.
yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a really cohesive film. It's one of the best local films I'd ever seen. I mean, I told Davis, our editor, whenever you sent me a copy, I'm like, this is really great. Like I was really, really happy to see it. And actually was one of the short films that somebody sends me that I went back and rewatched on my own volition because I liked it so much. So
Nice.
it's very clear. I think the thing that separates you from a lot of filmmakers locally, especially, is that you do have this like actual knowledge of things that were made before Pulp Fiction.
Yes.
And you know, I feel like just in our conversations, you watch a lot more older stuff, even the newer stuff, even though you keep up with that too. So of those movies from like Easy Rider to Raging Bull, to make a reference to Peter Biskin's great book, Easy Riders, Raging Bulls. What were some of those movies of the 70s that just kind of blew your mind? Because I remember taking a class when I was in college on the American film renaissance, and I was just like never the same after that class.
I mean, like we could talk for an hour, like just talking about some of the greats. I would say specifically for this film, MK Ultraviolence, like obviously Parallax View is in there, especially during the psych out sequence and kind of like the whole hypnotization, like just how you can use like pictures and editing and rhythm to like classical music that can really kind of put someone in a trance and like hypnotize people. So obviously that movie has a very like post JFK assassination tinge to it. Like you you can't make a movie like that anymore. I mean, like it opens with an assassination on like a senator in Seattle, and then it just hard cuts to just old white men in like a government like boardroom, and they tell you the official narrative, and it's just like obviously that's not true. And then the parallax view title comes in, and it's just like, okay, this is like what we're getting into. So that's up there, and just kind of like the style of William Friedkin. Obviously, like I would be in jail if I acted like him on set these days, so I can't actually say that I'm a ton influenced by him. Obviously, his films have like personality-wise, I can't say that, but just his kind of sporadic, really run on the gun like filmmaking style, just like the energy, the pacing of the actors, and long zoom lenses, and general aesthetic. I think I heavily borrowed from like French Connection and movies like that for just the aesthetic of this, and kind of just looking back at like a lot of movies these days just have like a bland sort of opaque look to them, and I wanted to steer clear from that as far as the image goes for this film. So I kind of referenced a lot of like stills from anything that from like the late 60s all throughout the 70s, and like that had that Technicolor look to it. So like I remember there's one still, I don't know if it's collected in here, but there's a shot in my film of just like these Polaroid sunglasses, and that's the introduction to our main villain. And I'm obviously I completely aped that from Cool Hand Luke, but I like this is the color I was going for, is what I told my cinematographer and colorist. So I was just really trying to, like, as much as we can make this look and feel like it was kind of shot in the 60s, or just tip the hat to it more so. Uh, that was kind of like my main goal as far as style for this. So kind of went all over the place.
Yeah, and that was also something I commented on when I saw the movie, was just like how much it looked like a movie. And you know what we sort
Sure.
of get is, I mean, we're going to talk about Saw 10, which I'm actually really looking forward to seeing, but you do have that washed out, bland, just kind of like streaming look to everything now. And a movie like Alan J. Pakula's The Parallax View, or the work that he did on All the President's Men, those are gorgeous movies, even though they're shot with like fluorescent lighting and in offices. And you know, they're
Yeah.
not the most like sexy exotic locations, but there was just some element of craft to shooting these everyday places that you just don't really see anymore in films. And you do a great job with MK Ultraviolence doing that. So I do hope at least some of our viewers got the chance to get tickets. And if not, I know that Davis and I will be covering the event live on Twitter as we go in and out of screenings all week. So when the virtual options get up, we'll throw a link up on the Pamphleteers Twitter page so that people can, I guess I should call it X now, but I'm not going to.
Oh, yeah.
We'll throw up some links, so whenever that's available on Monday, people will get the chance. I do love the fact that the festival is like basically creating a little theatrical window for you, where if people want to see it up front, they have to do that. Because I know in the past, whenever they were sort of recovering from COVID, everything was just kind of available online. And
Yeah.
now people are going to have to go see your movie or wait 3 days, which is kind of a cool thing for you all, because you do get that big audience out, and that's going to be really great. Why don't we go over some of the picks? I mean, I know you went to the festival last night. I did not get a chance because I was prepping for the show, but you know, what was the read of the room last night? I mean, was it well attended? Were people kind of like back to the pre-COVID days, or was it a little bit more muted? Because I know in the past, I didn't go last year. I actually covered the SCAD Savannah Film Festival instead of this one.
Okay.
But you know, over the past couple of years, I know like people have said that the attendance have been dropping off. So, what was the read of the room last night when you were there?
It was packed, wall to wall. I mean, I didn't go to an opening premiere of that documentary, but I was there for kind of like the opening party for all the filmmakers to kind of meet each other. And it was, I mean, wall to wall, and it was like getting hot. So I had to like take my jacket off because I started sweating. So the energy, I feel like, is really palpable for this festival. You know, I read your article yesterday, and it does feel like I wasn't there, you know, prior to the festival being sold off in 2019, but it does feel like this. I feel like we're getting our legs back after the pandemic. Because it's if I can, like I did get a short film in the Nashville Film Festival 2 years ago, and it was just kind of sporadic, not really well attended. It was kind of, I mean, it was just tough. Like, you know, not everybody was there. The venues were just in kind of weird, like, I think I had my short screen at, I can't remember what it's called. It's one venue like near Germantown. Um, it has like a weird name to it, but it was just like, oh, this kind of feels weird. The projection and like the sound was great, but like just the vibe wasn't, the energy was just still kind of muted. But I feel like based off last night going into this weekend, I think this is going to be a pretty good one. So
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the best lineups I've seen. I mean, I was a little bit concerned. That was one of the reasons last year that I opted to go to. And I was actually in Savannah on a job, but I plan to come back. And then I saw the lineup, and I'm like, you know what? Like, I just, you know, we'll just get somebody else to kind of handle this year, just because there wasn't really a lot of stuff that was playing, and then a lot of the stuff that was playing was also playing at some of the film festivals that, you know, over the past 5 years have really kind of exploded on the scene. I mean, Sidewalk in Birmingham is now kind of taking that scrappy place on the movie maker lists. And then SCAD Savannah Film Festival has sort of become this big award showcase because they'll bring celebrities in. I mean, it's a very different vibe than Nashville. So I was really happy this year that they really did seem to kind of draw that line in the sand and really get back to their roots a little bit. So I've
yeah,
been more excited about this film festival than I have in about 5 years. And I feel like a lot of that too is just the programming. When somebody comes in to program a festival and they're not local, it takes a little while to figure out how that works. And I think that now that the program or the festival has been here for a few years and really sort of gotten a feel for the city, we're seeing the results of that and just this really, really, really impressive lineup. So what are some of the films you're most looking forward to? I know Geneva's got my article up. I do kind of a deep dive into the fest. I sifted through everything and sort of made about 3 to 4 films I'd recommend every day. But what's really exciting to you that's coming up over the next 6 days?
Well, Fingernails sounds kind of interesting. I all of these films, like, I just kind of like look through the cast or the crew, and then I don't really read anything, and then I kind of see an image, and I'm like, oh, I'll see that one. So there's like a few Graveyard Shift feature films that I want to check out over the weekend. I think some of the names are escaping me, but there's like a 1970s set one set during
Sacrifice
Christmas,
Game.
like which also is playing at Knoxville Horror Film Festival. So I'm looking to check that one out. There's a short film by Alden Ehrenreich that is premiering later today, I think in the afternoon, as part of their kind of, I jokingly called it like Oscar bait shorts, but he directed it, he stars in it, and Francis Ford Coppola executive produced it. So I think that's enough. Like, that's enough to get me to like sit in the seat and watch it. And he, coming off of Oppenheimer, like he was kind of like, it wasn't a standout, but he's like, oh, this guy's really good. Because after Han Solo, it seemed like his career was finished. So it's good to see like kind of like a comeback from that failure of a Disney Star Wars movie. So
Yeah.
and I think he shot it on film too. He said somewhere, I think on his Instagram, like, it's like after working on Oppenheimer, it's like, if I don't shoot my first short film on film, like, who am I? So pretty cool that he's got a short film here, and interested to see in his kind of directing style, because I mean, he's an actor I'd love to work with one day. He's got like an old school, like old Hollywood, like leading man charisma to him, I think. So
yeah, and I mean, I think like he started out in Hail Caesar by the Coen brothers and really did a great job on that part. And I was kind of, when I saw Cocaine Bear and saw him show up in that, I was like, oof, like this is a pretty big tumble from like leading man status and Solo. So it is good that he's also appearing in one of the movies we're going to talk about on the rundown called Fair Play. That's going to be on Netflix, I think.
Yeah.
It's playing at the Belcourt this weekend. So yeah, I mean, and the other good thing about the shorts is they are available on demand on Monday as well. I mean, that's not a substitute. I mean, I feel like in your case where it's sold out, you know, we can't really hawk your film and the screening tonight. So
sure.
I'm the Graveyard Shift lineup seems like a really good return to form as well, because you know, I'm planning on going to see The Puppet Man tomorrow night, which is like a evil Pied Piper demon movie. And then The Sacrifice Game has gotten really rave reviews. And then I think on Monday night, they've got When Evil Lurks. And if you haven't been to one of the Graveyard Shift screenings in the past, they're just really cool because you get a lot of horror fans coming out and it's a really great audience.
Yeah.
Always, invariably, you know, that happens at these particular screenings late at night because people are there. You know, a lot of people are there to network and party. So the people that are going out are like hardcore fans of these movies.
Yeah.
You know, today we've got a Backlight Production screening, which we're going to talk to the filmmakers behind that in the next segment. I'm planning on going to Fingernails, and then I'm seeing your movie. But for those who can't get into Jay's movie tonight, there is a wonderful documentary playing called Another Body that I've actually luckily had the chance to see. And it's this really amazing movie about porn deepfakes. There's a college student, and suddenly she found all these images of her performing sex acts online, and it wasn't her. And they kind of trace it back to this like one dude. And there's so many legal loopholes, like she couldn't get help, even though this was ruining her reputation. So for those of you that cannot get in tonight, I would highly recommend that one. It's playing at Vandy's Black Box. Anything else on the other days you're looking forward to? Because I know we've got some bigger movies playing, like Eileen with Anne Hathaway on Sunday or Saturday. And then
yeah, I just saw images from it. Like I said, I try to go into these really cold. I think it's called Divinity. It's this black and white, guess like almost like cerebral horror film. I don't know if I don't know if it's an American movie. It might be foreign, but that had some like Tarkovsky-esque like imagery to it. So I'm interested in checking that out. I think that might be playing Saturday or Sunday. I'm not sure which. Um, and
And do you need this?
obviously, besides that, I think it's called Divinity. I might be wrong. um, I've been so just kind of like hyping up my short film that I haven't really had the chance to really dive deep. And there it is, right there. Yeah. Um, I would say that that would be like a very artsy, like almost David Lynchian type experience because this music video that's preceding it looks trippy too. So I just if you're in the mood for like some abstract horror looking imagery, I think that might be your bag. So
Yeah, and that one's playing tomorrow at 9 p.m. So yeah, we got a lot of really good options. A couple of movies that I'm really excited about, and I'm glad the festival got, because it seemed like in 2021, 2022, there were a lot of international films that, if they weren't genre, seemed to like kind of suddenly disappear, which Nashville had always been known, when Brian Owens was the programmer, as a place you could go to find these international films, maybe 6 months to a year before they got a release, if they ever actually came to Nashville or other bigger cities. So we've got Alice Rorocker's latest, La Chimera, playing on Sunday. She did Happy as Lazaro for Netflix a few years ago. So I'm looking forward to that one. The cool thing too about the festival this year is Tuesday and Wednesday are going to be at the Belcourt. So they're going to be in one place. And most of the films that are playing are really, really great that day. We've got Foe coming out with Saoirse Ronan and Paul Mescal as kind of the closing night film. And I know you're excited to see that one for sure.
yeah.
We also have this really kind of crowd-pleasing movie called A Taste of Things from France with Juliette Binoche that's playing on Tuesday. Tuesday also has John Carney, the director of Once and Begin Again, premiering his new movie Flora and Son, which is, if you've seen a John Carney movie, there are these kind of really optimistic crowd pleasers that are usually like rom-coms, but very, very well done. And they always have to do with music and the passion behind music, because John Carney started out as a musician before he became a film director. And then we have the new movie Fallen Leaves on Wednesday by the Finnish film director Aki Kaurismäki, which is one of the ones I'm really, really looking forward to. So the great thing about the festival this year is there really is something for everyone. If you're a horror fan, you've got some really high quality product. If you really like international movies, we've got those too. So really, I think anybody in Nashville this year can go to this, which I don't think has always been true in the past. I mean, we were talking a little bit about Trump derangement syndrome earlier and that kind of concept. And I felt like a lot of arts programming suffered in the Trump years and in the time directly after Trump and during COVID, because of the fact that they just kind of wanted to program something that fit their particular ideology. And that was more important, I feel like, even on a Hollywood level than the craft and the story behind it. So, it's good that we're actually getting films that are probably political, but at least are a little more nuanced than what's been around in the past. I mean, I don't think that's a Nashville problem. I think that's kind of a Hollywood and culture problem in general, but it is good to see we're kind of back to basics this year. So, and I'm headed down there after the show today. So I'm looking forward to being able to meet some filmmakers, hang out with you, hang out with our editor. And for those of you that want to go to the festival and still aren't sure what to watch, we have the pamphleteer guide up, and then at least some of our staff is going to be tweeting every time we see something this weekend. So that's sort of our plan. So Jay, is there anything else you want to add? I know you're going to hang out in between interviews and come back to film rundown, but again, your movie's playing tonight will be available virtually. Anything else you want to add before we jump to our next segment?
I don't think so. I'm pretty stoked for tonight. Obviously, I'm stoked to show my short film, but there's going to be a lot of other good ones. From people that I know personally. So I think my friend Sam Sisk has a sci-fi short film closing the program. I think I'm opening and I think he's closing, but his is a sci-fi short film called Departure, and it's got a very Gareth Edwards-esque tone to it. I've seen it. It's really good. I'm excited to see some other ones from not just here, but like all over the state. So it should be a pretty good time.
Yeah, so I mean, that's one of the great opportunities for those of you who haven't been to a film festival before. A lot of the directors will be in attendance. Actors won't be in attendance because of the Screen Actors Guild situation, unless they have a waiver. But you get to like kind of walk up to the filmmakers and ask them questions and meet up with them, you know, outside or in the lounge or places like that. So, I mean, I feel like this is a really great community event, and it's a nice chance for people to connect. And I've made a lot of connections with people that I have worked with over the years at the Nashville Film Festival. So, Jay, you're going to hang out for the rundown, and I want to go ahead and introduce our next guests. This was pre-recorded yesterday because they are obviously at the festival today and have a 4 o'clock screening. But I was really excited to talk to Corbin Eaton and Haley Tabor yesterday, who made the movie A Backlight Production, which chronicles an all disability or all adults with disabilities theater troupe and their project to put on Shrek the Musical as part of their ongoing theater classes. So we're going to go ahead and cut to that interview and be back live for the film rundown in about 20-30 minutes. So in our continuation of our Nashville Film Festival week here on Culturally Appropriate, I'm going to speak to the producer and the director of the Tennessee Place Films selection, A Backlight Production. And this is a movie that's near and dear to my own heart because I have worked with Backlight Productions with my students. I made a film with some of their actors before I even knew Backlight existed, but they're one of my favorite local nonprofits based in the Franklin area. And we're lucky to be joined today by Melissa Smith, who is the founder of Backlight, and they're celebrating their 10th anniversary this year, as well as Corbin Eaton, the director of A Backlight Production, and Haley Tabor, the producer of the film. So welcome to the show, y'all.
Thanks
for having us.
Thank you.
I think the best way for us to get started, and Backlight has really made a large impact on the greater Middle Tennessee community over the past 10 years, but I want to make sure if people have not heard of you, they sort of know the basis of this film before we go into it. So, Melissa, could you tell us a little bit about what Backlight does and also how you got started with this organization?
Yeah, happy to. So Backlight is a theater arts program for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And, you know, the whole purpose of our organization is to create large-scale performance opportunities that are going to feature people with disabilities in the leading roles and give artists the opportunity to use their gifts to put somebody else in the spotlight who doesn't generally get it in the performing arts. And so we produce theater performances, films, we have a music program, a dance program, a playwright program, all sorts of things. We're just all about creating those opportunities that our community desires and giving them a stage that's going to be a safe place for them to succeed.
Great. And I am ashamed to say that I got COVID before Shrek the Musical, so that was one I was not able to see. But I know I've been attending your show since 2015, kind of when you started in church auditoriums. And two of my favorites over the years have been the production of Romeo and Juliet with the Tennessee Shakespeare Company and Beauty and the Beast, which I know was incredibly special for the students. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey and your other collaborations with Nashville and Franklin arts organizations?
Yeah, so I started Backlight Productions. It was kind of just an experiment. You know, I was working with people with disabilities at a local thrift store, and I was also, you know, helping out with musicals and whatnot on the side. And so I just decided to write a little rendition of Cinderella and produce it with my friends that were at the store with me. And so we pulled up props and costumes and things from around the shop, and we put on this little play for about 40 people in a youth room at a local church. And then after that was over, everybody was in tears, and we were like, wow, this is very small, but it is a really big impact. And so decided to keep on going with it and had everybody invite their friends. And over time, it has just been a snowball. It's been moving into a dance studio. It's been getting onto a real stage, adding lights. You know, every show has gotten gradually bigger and bigger. And now, you know, one thing that we found elevated our shows tremendously was partnering with various professional organizations and professional artists. The first organization we ever partnered with was with the Nashville Shakespeare Festival. And that's when we did Romeo and Juliet, and we involved local professional actors in the show and just found that it was the neatest collaboration that you've ever seen. I mean, professional Shakespeare actors performing on stage with actors with disabilities, you know, just like peers, you know, and so really it helps the show to run smoothly. It gave our students such confidence and showed them respect as artists and as adults. And so we decided to continue collaborating. So we've collaborated with Studio 10, with the National Children's Theater, with the Rep, with, you know, y'all at your universities. And we've also involved local youth performers as well, giving them a chance to be like an onstage buddy and just encouraging kids to, you know, take a step back and use their gifts to help somebody else out and show kindness and promote inclusion, all the good stuff. And now we do full Broadway musicals. Those are our biggest shows that we produce. We found that we can do them through multicasting, which is giving multiple actors the same role in a show. And so, you know, I always, you know, say how when we did Wizard of Oz, every time Dorothy went up the Yellow Brick Road, a new Dorothy came down the Yellow Brick Road. We keep the costumes consistent and we give each actor just the amount that they personally want and can handle. And in that way, we allow all of our participants to feel like the star of the show.
And that was one of the really cool moments in Beauty and the Beast, is whenever everybody put on the dress. And was it part of the dance scene? I mean, I think that was like just lump in your throat in the audience, just awesome.
Yes, that show, you know, is our biggest student requested show. I can't tell you the amount of letters and text messages that I got saying that we want to do Beauty and the Beast. So I was like, well, clearly this is what we're doing this year, apparently. And so, you know, naturally every girl wanted to be Belle and every guy wanted to be the Beast. And, you know, it's hard when you want so badly to give everybody that opportunity. I mean, that's what we're about. So it doesn't matter, you know, how great of an actor you are, we want to give you a chance. And so, you know, clearly we couldn't give everybody the role of Belle, but we thought, you know, what about that iconic scene, that ballroom scene when Belle's in her yellow dress and the Beast is in the blue and they come down and they do Tale as Old as Time. It's that magical moment. You know, why can't every girl be Belle in that part? And so we had a lot of fun just dyeing wedding dresses from yellow and finding different formal gowns from around town. And we costumed every single girl to be Belle in that number. And each one had their moment on that stage where they got to dance with one of our young men and feel like the star of the show and feel like a princess for that one part.
So I'm going to tap in our other guest, and I want to know a little bit about how the three of you developed this collaboration that resulted in the documentary that's premiering tomorrow at 4 p.m. as part of the Nashville Film Festival. So if anybody wants to jump in here and just sort of tell me how this process got started.
Yeah. So Haley and I both work for Massive Mission, which we're a video production company based in Nashville. And mostly what we do is corporate video production. But we also devote a lot of our time to nonprofit work, whether it's, you know, filming videos or just donating some of our actual profits to those nonprofits. And when I first was hired, I was living in Chicago and I was looking for just some organizations that I could bring to the table and say, hey, I'm passionate about this. And it took no time at all to find Backlight. And I pretty much like demanded my boss. I was like, hey, if you want me to move to Nashville, this is one of the organizations that I really want to explore. And so met with Melissa and we had talked about making just like a short little promo. And then that promo turned into following them for about a year. And as they made Shrek the Musical, which was just the most rewarding experience. And Haley got involved when she was hired. And yeah, I'll let you.
I got started a little after they got started with the documentary process, and I was there for the entire back half of it. And that was the first collaboration that Corbin and I have had, and it's just been a great time. And now we're collaborating on more projects, and it's been my favorite project since starting with this company.
Great. And I mean, this was also not an ordinary time to be making movies in general, right? I mean, you did this kind of as the pandemic was not at the point where I know when Melissa and I kind of exchanged emails early on about how's the program going to adapt to this. But I mean, you were still dealing with that whenever you were making the film, right? So you want to talk a little bit about how you navigated that aspect as a documentarian whose job is sort of to invade people's personal space, right? So
Yeah, I mean, it was the typical, we were masking up, and it was a lot of telephoto lenses, I'll say that, just to get as close as we could with still maintaining that distance. But even in the doc, you can kind of see I want to say, like, evolution of people starting to kind of phase out. But yeah, I mean, from the very first rehearsal, you guys were rocking those face shields. But we made it work. We did somehow. But yeah.
So I think a couple of things that I want to talk about on the show, just because maybe not a lot of our viewers, some of our viewers are very familiar with film lingo and film festivals and the whole apparatus, and some aren't. So Haley, could you tell us what a producer does? This is a question I get a lot, and I think everybody's got a different answer. So I always like to ask somebody, when they produce film, what that job entails according to them.
Yeah, I think for this project, it looked a lot like working with Corbin to schedule dates, working with Melissa and communicating with Melissa to find out when they were doing significant things in their rehearsal process. So we had to make sure that we were there when they got introduced to the professional actors, when one of their members was announcing that she was pregnant, things like that we definitely wanted to be there to film, making sure that we could schedule that. So a lot of scheduling on the front end, and then hopping behind the camera because this is a smaller crew for a documentary. So one of my roles was also hopping behind the camera when we didn't have people to do that. I was there on set for all the interviews to help with the interviews, building a rapport with some of the cast members who were being interviewed to make sure they felt comfortable before they got on. And then in the post process, Corbin edited it mostly, but I was just there to check and make sure that, the tone was consistent throughout. I helped going through B-roll and pulling that, and then making sure that we had a schedule for making the teasers, the trailers, any kind of posters, figuring out how we were going to premiere the project. Were we going to do a premiere, or were we going to submit to festivals, which we tried doing a different premiere originally, but then we felt like the festival was going to be the best way to premiere this. So I think that the figuring out the distribution was probably the most difficult part of producing, but that's what my role as a producer looked like. It was a lot of filling the spaces since we were a smaller crew. So my role as a producer probably looks a lot different than other people's roles as a producer.
Yeah. So what was that schedule like? Because knowing what I know about Backlight and how the rehearsals are pretty much, weekly whenever a show is going on, you kind of had a set schedule, but how do you sort of determine that? Because it's not like a commercial where you go on set for 3 days for 12 hours and you're done. And then also kind of the second part to that question, were you all working on other projects as you were doing this one?
Yeah, so our company, Massive Mission, works on corporate media most of the time. So we had to work around our schedule doing video shoots for corporations and for the company, as well as edits that we handle for our company as well. So it really was a balancing act in the beginning of making sure we were able to be there for those moments that Melissa really wanted us to capture, and those moments that we had decided that we definitely wanted to be there for. So making sure that we scheduled well in advance, being there for all of their rehearsal days when they were at the Nashville Children's Theater and for both of their performances. And in regards to Backlight does rehearse every week. So trying to make sure that we aligned with the various cast members, because the casts are different, making sure that we got footage of all of them before their role and then in costume later, and making sure that we were going through footage as we went so that we could see who we were lacking as we got towards the performance.
Yeah, it was kind of an evolving process of figuring out, okay, what's this story as we're going along. There were so many iterations of, as we'd go through, we'd reach like, okay, we're 2 months into this. Let's watch what we have. Let's see kind of where the direction of this is going. And then, something would happen and be like, that's the film right there. There's the core. So it was a constantly evolving process. Yeah.
It reminds me of that Werner Herzog quote about how on a film set the director's God, but in a documentary God's the director. So how much footage did you all actually have to go through in this? And the movie's like 30 minutes long, right?
Yeah, so the movie is just under like 25 minutes. And I mean, I
think there was like hours of footage.
I would say probably around. I always over exaggerate. I'm a born over exaggerator, so I naturally would be like, it was 10 hours of footage, but I do think it was probably around like 5 or 6 full on. Well,
I think it was more. It was hard to be prescriptive with the footage because there were so many wonderful moments happening with the cast in rehearsals. I mean, I think that you don't want to miss a beautiful moment between the actors at Backlight, and so it was really hard. I think not to overshoot, but I think it was worth it because I think the footage that we got is amazing, and we got to capture a lot of really wonderful moments that I think will expose people to what's going on the inside of Backlight and get to feel like they were there for the process of them getting ready for Shrek.
Yeah, and speaking of Shrek, did you all have to navigate any licensing issues with DreamWorks? Because I know, Melissa, just from some of our conversations, and I know in theater that's always a problem whenever, or not necessarily a problem, but a thing to navigate as you're going through. So did you all have to do that, or by definition of the fact that you were doing this documentary, did that sort of allow you not to have to necessarily?
Yeah, it was more so that latter route. We had a lot of discussion about that, especially when it came to featuring footage from the performance. You know, how much can we really show? And as you know, people will see in the doc, the focus isn't Shrek. The focus is all of the actors. And so that's kind of how we got away with it was, well, we're not going to show the full musical number, you know, the closing number, as much as fun as that Smash Mouth song is. We were able to just still focus on the core of the story, which is, I mean, the actors.
So as you were making this project, Corbin, what inspirations did you draw from? Like what films, filmmakers?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I wish I had a better answer. There's a documentary that kind of I've always loved, and I definitely, especially in the post process when we were trying to think of other stories like this. There's a documentary called Becoming Bulletproof, and it's about Zeno Mountain Farms in California, I believe. I know they're kind of all around the place. And similar story, it's a production company that makes feature films for actors with IDD. And it's the story of them making this Western film. It's a great documentary. Highly recommend it if you guys haven't seen it. So that I'd say was like the biggest influence, just because it was very similar subject matter, and navigating this topic was kind of a good guide. But that was, I wish I had it. Shrek was also a good inspiration. Yeah.
And I know just from knowing some of these actors, I mean, some of the faces are familiar. I know I made a movie with Kara, and I think we had a picture of her pop up a little bit ago. You've got so many avenues you could take on a movie like this. And I do not envy you. And I mean, in that regard, for sort of picking, you know, what is the core, as you mentioned, of this particular story, because every one of these students at Backlight have a feature documentary that could be made about their lives. Melissa's got one that could be made about her life. So how did you sort of develop the spine of this story from the footage and just from sort of figuring out like what you had to leave out, what you really wanted to explore more but decided not to?
Yeah, I mean, if I could do it over again, I would tell my boss, hey, I'm not going to take on any projects. We're going to follow them 100%, because I would have loved to, you know, dive into a lot of the personal side of a lot of actors, if not as many as we could, outside of just the theater, and just to show that reflection. But it was really, I think what came down to it was just focusing on the production itself rather than having one hero per se of the doc. We kind of highlight several actors in, you know, during the casting process, revisit them once they have their roles, and, you know, them gaining that confidence. But I know Haley.
Yeah, I think part of what informed Corbin's editing of the story was that I think we ran out of focus, but part of what informed the decision was actually our interview with Melissa. She spoke about how one of her dreams is that people are doing a backlight production everywhere, that a backlight production just kind of becomes a term that other theaters use to talk about their inclusive performances. So that really kind of informed, because we had so much footage of all these incredible cast members, and we wanted to include them all and give them all a chance to be in the doc and have a little bit of a spotlight. So following that phrase, that sentence that Melissa had said, I think kind of informed how we went about the doc, because we really wanted this to be an opportunity as like a step in Melissa's goal to reaching that dream of having other people knowing what a backlight production is and how they can implement backlight productions in their area as well.
Yeah, we kind of framed it going off of that as like, hey, here's how to do it. This is a step-by-step process. If you want to do it, yes, it is a lot of work. And, you know, as I think Jordan says, it truly does take a village to put on a production like this. But if you have the heart and the passion, you can put on a backlight production.
Yeah. And I will say too that we had discussed that at the beginning when we were talking about what kind of movie we wanted to make. I think that was our ultimate goal in the end, was showing the process, which was why you were going to follow us over the whole year. And so I liked that it culminated to that, you know, this is encouraging others to do the same. And so it's just capturing, because nobody really knows like how much goes into it. And so this is just a little glimpse into the, you know, the process that is a backlight production.
And then something that's really fascinated me about Backlight the entire time is we have these issues of representation that constantly come up, and, you know, the general way that they're handled, and please, you know, if I'm speaking out of turn, you know, we can make for some good TV here, I guess, but oftentimes you have situations where an actor with a disability will be cast in kind of a thankless role just to be cast, and then there'll be some press on that actor, because it's kind of like the production wants the credit for casting somebody with a disability, and then they don't really have the trust in that actor that they should have to let the actor shine. And, you know, Melissa, what's been amazing about your productions is, you know, the actors and you collaborate, and they put their spin on this particular, and it really is, you know, their stamp on this show, and you direct that and you guide that, but at the same time, it becomes this kind of organic process where, you know, this is performance before anything else. I mean, whenever you're watching a backlight show, you have that suspension of disbelief that you would have if you were going to see any old show, a TPAC or a movie. It's not something that really is different in any way, and I really appreciate that about the productions that I've seen, and I'm sure this is probably something that comes up in the documentary too. I mean, this is not, you're not playing with kid gloves with these actors. I mean, they are doing a full performance, and they are doing it well, and they are dedicated as heck to it. So yeah, that is one thing we're very proud of. You know, we try to make our shows as professional as possible, and we try to, you know, treat all of our performers like they are professionals, you know, but I think that there also is this, you know, grace that underlines all of our shows, in the sense where, you know, a lot of our performers, you know, there's no such thing as a fourth wall. You know, some of them might just stop in the middle of the show and talk to the audience, and that could totally take you out, which in a typical theater setting wouldn't necessarily be appropriate. But in our setting, it's kind of like you just have the freedom to be you. And so, you know, we have some actors who you wouldn't even know had any kind of a disability whatsoever, and they're just going to blow you away, and they're going to be so professional. And then you're going to have some actors that are just out there having fun. And we just love that we create a space for all of it to happen at the same time. Yeah. And Melissa, I did have a question for you as well, because I know in film, if you're a screenwriter, as you all know, like, you saw your stuff and you got to be okay with it being changed. But if you're in theater, you know, the writer is kind of the main issue. And a lot of publishing companies are like, you do not change a word of this whenever you're performing a show. So how does that relationship work? Because I know it might be a little bit different for the type of projects that you're working on, Melissa. So, I mean, how does that conversation go?
Yeah. So when I first wanted to do licensed plays and musicals, I didn't think we could, because I was thinking to myself, there's no way that one actor could play this entire part without us cutting or editing it. That's why our first big show we did was Romeo and Juliet, because, you know, I could edit Shakespeare down. I could, you know, they still did the language, but we were able to like trim things. But then that's where the multicasting came in and kind of alleviated that, because we don't alter the words. We don't cut things, because you're right, we can't. And we've tried to get permissions to be able to have things edited, and it's just most of the time we just don't get any response. And so we didn't know really what to do. And so that's where the multicasting relieves that. And so now, instead of cutting it, I just say, okay, well, you're going to be this role person for, you know, scenes 1 and 2. And I think that's amount that you can handle and you can memorize. And after that, I'll have somebody else take over for you. And so I think that was a game changer for our whole program.
For sure. So have the students seen the movie yet, or is that going to happen tomorrow?
That's going to happen tomorrow. Yeah. It's going to be fun.
Oh, that's great. And are you planning on doing, after Nashville's over, what's the future of the project? Are you submitting to other festivals, or are you going to be showing more screenings of it in town?
Yeah. So as we mentioned earlier, that was an earlier avenue we explored, was doing some big screening event. But we haven't really explored that too much since. I know Nashville Film Fest is kind of the big premiere for this. We're definitely going to make it public online so everyone can see it, anyone can watch it once it's officially out. But yeah, we'll see if there's any future screenings of it. That's something we might explore.
Great. So you're not going to do a festival run outside of Nashville, or?
No, not. I mean, we haven't actually discussed that too much. So this is actually the first time we're talking about that here.
Probably more of a me thing that I should be thinking about
Yeah.
as a producer. But no, I think what was most important for us looking at distribution of this film was how do we premiere in a way where the students can see it. So that was our main focus. And then anything past that, I think we're hoping to make sure that all the students get to see it. And then if we were to submit it to any other festivals, trying to be purposeful about which ones we submit to, and make sure that it's in support of the overall goal of allowing other people to learn how to do a backlight production and the importance of doing it, and just the fun of doing these productions.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to be deliberate because there are so many film festivals, and we're really lucky in that Nashville is such a major festival, such a major draw, and we have it right here in the community, but also that it is as dedicated to local programming and putting these really interesting blocks together of films, while it's also showing, you know, these movies from Lithuania and kind of the stuff that, you know, the festival does itself. It's grown over these past 54 years. So is there any other film that you're looking forward to seeing at the festival after your screening's over? I mean, you all are lucky because it's kind of like done tomorrow, and then you get a week to just kind of enjoy yourselves with your passes. So
yeah, Haley and I actually have another film in the festival.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah,
it's a short film.
It's a short film we worked on last November, and yeah, that'll be playing on Saturday. And so not completely out of the woods yet after the screening tomorrow. But we actually were just going through the schedule and kind of just getting tickets for everything we could.
Yeah.
I know what was the screening you had mentioned?
I Used to Be Funny.
Yes.
Joe. Those have some bigger casts. I really like Rachel Sennett, so I was really excited about I Used to Be Funny. But I know we got, what was the horror one that's playing after I Used to Be Funny? We're doing
the Puppet Man. That's what I'm a big horror fan, so I'm very excited for a lot of those, you know, late night showings.
We're doing the Tennessee genre horror.
Yes.
One.
Yeah.
So going to a lot of horror things, which is very different than a backlight production.
I know. I wish we could end on a backlight, so we end on a note, but you know, we'll get what we get. Yeah.
And I mean, we're going to be talking actually in this show. J. Curtis Miller, who did MK Ultra Violence, is that one. So what's next for you all in terms of film projects coming down the pike? Are you working on anything now, or taking kind of a breather?
Yeah, so well, Corbin, actually, if you want to take this away, we've been filming one of Corbin's shorts, which is in the horror comedy genre.
Yeah, we just finished, we just wrapped production on the second short I made with my big collaborator, Mike Bentley, who I made our film that's premiering on Saturday, Sympathy for the Devil. This one, it's funny, the first two short films I made with him and with Haley, both had to do with demons. We did not mean to do that. It just so happened. And now it's like, well, my parents, my very religious parents, are a little concerned. So we'll see if we make a third one. But that's in post-production right now. That one is called Inner Demons. And very excited for that. It's been a long process making that. And yeah, and Haley is working on a project.
Yeah, I'm in pre-production on my first written and directed short film, which Corbin has been helping me out with, called Steakhouse, which is about a young gentleman who has a severe phobia of meat because his parents are cannibals. So it's also in kind of like the horror genre, horror comedy.
We're not really selling ourselves that we can make wholesome content like a Backlight Production.
But we're both very excited for the upcoming productions with Backlight, and
yes,
are continuing to support Backlight as we wrap up our process with a Backlight production.
So I'm just wondering if you all could collaborate on a version of Sweeney Todd at some point in the future.
Actually,
don't tempt us.
That would be awesome.
That'd be very fun.
We might take that idea and do something with it. That'd be cool.
It's definitely went in a direction I was not expecting. But I'm here for it, so. And Melissa, I know that you have something very special coming up. I mean, you mentioned Cinderella at the beginning of this interview, and I think we have a slide from TPAC. So do you want to tell us, I know this is a busy October for you, so do you want to tell us what's coming up in the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, so like I said, the first show we ever did was my original rendition of Cinderella. That was very small. And so for our 10-year anniversary celebration, we thought it would only feel fitting to revisit Cinderella, and this time to do it as big as possible. And so we decided to reach out to TPAC, and we will be performing Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella with almost 100 performers with disabilities. We figured since we were going to be at TPAC, we wanted to give that opportunity to as many people as possible. And so we invited 6 other nonprofits that serve the community in the arts to be part of it in some sort of a way. And so that's why we have so many folks involved, but it's going to feature Backlight actors and all of the named roles and a lot of the dance numbers and whatnot. And we've got a lot of professional guest artists that are joining us for it. And the big exciting one is Laura Osnes, who was the original Broadway Cinderella, is actually our fairy godmother. And she is going to have that magical moment of singing It's Possible on stage. And we're going to have all of our ladies out there singing It's Possible with her. So it's going to be a really just special and magical evening, and we're performing at the same time as Wicked. So Wicked is going to be doing a matinee and an evening show the same time as us, and so quite literally impossible things are happening every day because that place is going to be a madhouse. But I mean, how cool is it though that our performers get to perform in the same venue and at the same time as like a touring Broadway show? So I mean, just makes us all the more pros. But yeah, so tickets are available on the TPAC website and on our website, backlightproductions.org. There's 1,100 seats in the house. We've sold about 600 right now, and we would absolutely love to just pack that place out. So if you want to see the most unique and creative rendition of Cinderella you've ever seen, this is the time to go.
Well, I know that I will be getting my tickets for sure. And my wife and I are very excited to go, and I'm sure I'll probably see all of you there too.
Yeah, we'll be
so
there.
For sure. So your movie tomorrow, just to clarify for everybody, it's in our Nashville Film Festival rundown. There's a plug for the film on the Friday slot. So it is 4 o'clock at Vanderbilt's Black Box Theater tomorrow, or actually today, which is Friday since we're previously recording this. So, and Geneva's got us there for those of you that are interested in going to see the production. It is at 4 p.m. in the Rothschild Black Box Theater. So Geneva, thank you for keeping my date straight for me. Well, I'm looking forward to the festival. I'm looking forward to seeing your movie. And Melissa, we'll keep promoting this until it's time for Cinderella. So I'm glad we kind of got to talk about both Backlight at the film festival and Backlight at TPAC today. So thank you all so much for joining us, and I'm sure I'll see you all around at some point during the month.
I'm sure we will. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Right. I did also want to mention, even though the transition was a little awkward, that we also talked to Melissa Smith, the founder of Backlight Productions. I know she's going to see the screening of this movie today, but we will return to their discussion a little bit later on this month of her amazing production of Cinderella that's coming up with the theater troupe at TPAC. So be sure to check that out as well once your Nashville Film Festival hangover has been nursed over the next couple of weeks. So our final segment today, as always, is the weekly film rundown. As if there weren't enough opportunities to see movies at Nashville, we have one of the most robust release calendars of the week. But before I get into the wide releases, I wanted to talk about a really cool program that AMC Theaters is doing in collaboration with distributor A24. Jay, have you heard about this at all yet?
I think in passing, yeah.
Yeah, so A24 is about 10 years old now. They're celebrating their 10th anniversary. And as a kickoff to that, they are partnering with AMC every Wednesday. And it's only at about 30 theaters in the country. We're lucky enough that AMC Thoroughbred 20 is involved. But every Wednesday, they're going to be showing one of their major horror movies. And I think we have a link to the image there on the webpage. But they're starting this Wednesday with Robert Eggers' The Witch. And in the future, they're going to be showing Ty West's X, Jonathan Glazer's Under the Skin, which is one of my favorite movies of the past 10 years, and the director's cut of Midsommar, which I'm very excited about because that's one of the few movies where the director's cut improved the movie by like 3 letter grades for me. I really did not like Midsommar when I saw it in theaters. I actually hated it. And then I gave the director's cut another chance, and it ended up being one of my favorite movies of the year. Jay, I don't know how you feel about any of these titles, but I'm sure you've seen them. So,
Yeah, the only one I haven't seen is Under the Skin, but I think seeing it in the theater would be perfect. So I'm eager to check that one out. And he's got a new film coming out later this year called I can't remember what it's called. It's something Zone in the title, but
Zone of
real
Interest.
quick. Yeah, it sounds really heavy. But that's funny you mentioned that Midsommar because I didn't like it really at all, and I've never seen the director's cut, so I might have to check that one out too.
I can't think of a movie where that's happened before, that just that extra 20 minutes of footage has completely changed the entire thing. I mean, I ended up seeing it in theaters when they released it over like Labor Day in 2019 for like a week during that period when nothing usually comes out. And I ended up dropping like $50 on the A24 Blu-ray with the director's cut, and I've watched it several times and just really, really love it. That's been the one time in my life that's actually happened. So I mean, I'm going to feel very, very, very behind when Nashville's over in terms of movie going, because this week things have just not slowed down. One movie that I really want to mention is Surprised by Oxford, which is directed by Franklin filmmaker Ryan Whitaker. I published a review of this movie on Wednesday because I did a story on Ryan and Ken Carpenter and the Franklin filmmakers that have sort of been making these feature films outside of the typical cliques of the Nashville film industry. And this movie just blew me away whenever I saw it. It's about a literature grad student studying at Oxford who is basically agnostic or even atheistic because of the fact that she had some family trauma. And it's about how she sort of reconciles her faith as she's developing this relationship. It's a really honest movie about faith. It's a great movie about faith. Ryan's actually going to be joining us on the show next week as our primary guest. So I'm really looking forward to talking to him about this movie. It also stars Franklin native Rose Reed, who, in all honesty, whether she's from Franklin or not, is just one of the most dynamic performers of her generation. I mean, I really hope that she has a very long career and she gets to be on screen as much as possible because she's an incredible actress. This movie is playing at a special engagement on Sunday nationwide and also in the UK. So if you didn't get a chance to see it when it premiered Wednesday night, Sunday's going to be your chance. And as much as I'm loving going to be at the film festival, I would say if you're going to the festival, sneak over to a theater where this is playing, go see it really quickly so you get the opportunity to have that big screen experience. Some other movies that are coming out, and I don't really know about the marketing about this one, Jay, but we can talk about it, is Gareth Edwards is the creator. And Gareth Edwards is probably most famous for directing the Godzilla reboot in 2014 and Rogue One, a Star Wars story. This movie to me looks really, really interesting. I mean, it's a piece of original intellectual property. It's got John David Washington. It's about this dystopian society, and he is fighting this kind of rogue AI. Have you heard anything about this film, or what are your impressions of it so far?
Man, I'm interested, and I have a Regal pass, so it's kind of like seeing a movie for free. So I think I will check this out in theaters. But last night I turned on a review of this guy that I follow recently, James Hancock on YouTube. He's a really good YouTube reviewer, and he just said it kind of fizzles out into nothing and is just kind of extremely slow and boring. But like not in like a good, like a thought-provoking, slow, boring way, more just like retread old ground. And some of this, like honestly, it looks like it's Elysium from 2013, which I didn't like at all. So I don't know. I'm already feeling mixed about it. But I do think Gareth Edwards is a better filmmaker than Neil Blomkamp. So I'm interested in seeing it, but I'm not sure exactly how I feel about it. But then there's other people that said it's the best movie they've seen all year. So he could be just like James's review might just be different taste from what I might have. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's really important for people who are constantly talking about how Hollywood doesn't make anything original to show up with this stuff. And that is something that's really great about that Regal Unlimited Pass or AMC A-List is that you pay $20 a month, whereas you would normally pay $20 a ticket in Nashville. And you can go see as many movies as you want with Regal Unlimited. You can go see 3 movies a week at AMC. Even if it's an IMAX or a Dolby, you still get in for the same price. So I have both of these services, and it is really nice to be able to actually take that entertainment time, go to the theater and sit with something as opposed to just like blindly scrolling through your streaming services. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. It doesn't really excite me. I think it looks gorgeous, but I'm hoping for a similar effect since you mentioned Neil Blomkamp, because I just kind of on a whim saw Gran Turismo last weekend, and that was like a pleasant surprise. I've never really liked anything he's ever done. I especially hate District 9. I think it's one of the most like ridiculous films that completely confuses its politics, but I was solidly impressed with Gran Turismo. So I'm hoping this is going to be a very similar situation, because I've heard Gareth Edwards is just a really nice guy, and he's somebody that jumped into Hollywood and these big IP properties, and we've never really gotten to see what a Gareth Edwards movie looks like on a big palette like this. So I think it's probably going to be worth time regardless. A couple of other films that are opening up. I'm not going to go through the whole list. I mean, we have 8 Bollywood, Nollywood, Collywood movies coming out this week at Regal Hollywood 27 and AMC Thoroughbred. So this would be a good time to check those out. But another one that I am interested in seeing, but isn't necessarily one that I'm rushing out to, is Fair Play with Alden Ehrenreich, who you mentioned earlier, and Phoebe Danvor from Bridgerton. This is supposed to be a throwback to the Paul Verhoeven erotic thrillers of the 90s, and it follows a yuppie couple who compete against each other for a promotion, and all hell breaks loose. It's at the Belcourt this week. I think it's streaming on Netflix next week, but I figured I would go ahead and say that it might be worth checking out, because it's one of those other ones that could be a pleasant surprise for us. And then the other movie that I want to say is probably worth our time. We'll talk about a couple of other ones here in a second, but The Kill Room. What's cool about it is it's the first collaboration between Uma Thurman and her daughter Maya Hawke, but it's an art world satire in which an art dealer played by Thurman teams up with a mobster played by Samuel L. Jackson for this money laundering scheme involving a hitman, Joe Manganiello, who I can never pronounce his name. And this hitman becomes the toast of the art world. So it looks like an art world satire, which can be kind of risky. I mean, sometimes they work, like Art School Confidential by Terry Zwigoff, and sometimes they're like Velvet Buzzsaw, the Netflix movie that starred Jake Gyllenhaal and Natalia Dyer and some other actors that was just kind of like way on the nose. The reviews have been really divisive, which for me, a movie that's like at a 50 to 60% at Rotten Tomatoes is usually one that I always make it a point to check out, because there's something there that is really dividing critics. So I'm looking forward to this one. And then I guess sorry, go ahead.
I just haven't heard of this. Like, I didn't even know this existed. So
yeah, movie marketers are just not doing their jobs these days, and they're like, why aren't people
No,
going to theaters? But I mean, if we get a chance and break between the festival or at some point before it leaves theaters, I would love to check it out. And the big kind of releases that are supposed to really reinvigorate the box office before The Exorcist next week and Taylor Swift the week after are Saw 10 and Paw Patrol. A lot of people online are referring to this as like a mini Barbenheimer called Saw Patrol, which I thought was kind of funny. Weirdly enough, the Saw movie is getting really, really good reviews, and so is Paw Patrol. Sort of speaking of that washed out aesthetic, we've got a good example of it right here. I mean, I plan to go ahead and go see the Saw movie. I mean, it has like an 83% right now. It's the highest rated movie coming out this week, which kind of surprised me. But it's apparently it takes place between Saw and Saw 2 for those of you who are really into this franchise, which I would not describe myself as, even though I've seen most of them. But it features the return of Tobin Bell as Jigsaw, the vigilante serial killer. And apparently what happens is he goes to Mexico for this experimental treatment, and these grifters kind of screw him over, and then he unleashes hell. So that's really where it goes from there. Are you excited about seeing Saw 10?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to actually see a new Saw movie in theaters willingly, but yeah, I grew up on the franchise. I think I wouldn't say that was my gateway to horror, but I was the prime age when the first movie came out. I think I was like 13 or 12, and then I saw 3 and 4 in the theater, and I was religiously anticipated for Saw 3 because I loved Saw 2. I think Saw 2 might be the best one in the franchise. I'm like, there was a review that I watched a few days ago and said like the first half of the movie is just all character building on Jigsaw. Like he said like all the Saw movies have Jigsaw in them, or Joe Kramer, that's his name, I think. But he's never the forefront. It's always a generic police detective or one of the people in the trap. But this movie is his movie, so I think Tobin Bell's like a terrific actor, and they've utilized him in the best way possible. So yeah, I hope to see it this weekend before like it kind of gets buried beneath Taylor Swift and The Exorcist. I said to one of my friends, like, if Saw X is better than The Exorcist Believer, I think this is gonna be we're living in some weird, strange times, but that could very possibly happen. So.
Yeah, I guess we're going to see that next week. That's one of my highly anticipated movies of the year. And for those of you that want to check out the entire film rundown, again, we have 18 movies opening, so we don't have time to get through all of them here. The only other one I did want to briefly mention, if you're a Carlos Santana fan, there's a special engagement of a movie about Santana that's gotten some really great reviews playing at AMC Thoroughbred 20. I think I'll probably skip Paw Patrol until I have children of my own, but it's good to know it's really highly rated too. So I guess there's supposed to be a lot of movie watching this week, which is pretty good given the weather. And I guess everybody knows where we'll be and what we'll be doing for most of the next 5 days. And that is our show today. So thank you for joining me, Jay. And I hope to see some of our viewers at the Nashville Film Festival over the weekend. So if you're not there, whatever you do this weekend, give it some thought. Have a great weekend.